You know, when we're working in our offices, when we're working in our home offices, we look the way we look. I would like to request, as a start, just for security purposes, many of you know, you've had some interesting incidents on with the presentations, public presentations, where you would find that people would hack into the system. So one of the rules we've put in place is that if your phone does not have a name that we can verify as either linked in one way to another to either the music or the people that have been nominated or the media of sorts, we would have to put it back in the waiting room. So we would like for you guys, I think there's 2 or 3 that I see. If you can just rename yourself so that we know who you are, just in case you also have questions that you need to ask. If we could do that, I would really appreciate it. And then the meeting itself won't be very long, probably going to be about 30 or so minutes maximum. My name is Monges Makalima, and I will introduce myself shortly and this whole process. I'm waiting for technology to also catch up with me because you know Murphy's Law. As soon as I started loading the app, it started loading it on my laptop. It started loading it on my mobile instead of on my laptop. So at some point, we might get disconnected, but please don't fall away. Just come back in as I'm about to do the presentation. The other thing I just want to mention, we are recording the meeting as is required by protocol, just so that you know, and you don't get to be surprised that they didn't tell me that the meeting is recorded. It's mostly for our records, not necessarily to share, although there could be parts of it that we share publicly. So assume that the conversation that we're having might go public. Yeah, so I think those are the most important rules that I want to share. Now, just as an introduction, as I mentioned, my name is Monges Makalima. My work is always about excellence and evoking excellence in others. And a couple of years ago, we were sitting with a couple of jazz heads, as I tend to hang around some of these places. And one of the big complaints I kept hearing a lot, it's about four years ago now, was that jazz is not recognized as much as it should. And we have all of these awards, these big awards that happen, and most of the time, jazz doesn't seem to be valued as much. And so after a while, I'm not the guy that listens to complain for a long time. As soon as I heard those complaints, I said, what are you doing about it? And so for those who don't know, I'm a global executive coach by my everyday work, although I've been working in the arts sector for the last 15 or so years as director in different places in the orchestra and all of that. So I'm lucky I can be able to challenge people a little bit. But also I challenge myself, because if I see that somebody's not doing something about something, I do something about it. And that's how the Mzantsi Jazz Awards came into play. A quick update for those who have been part of our journey for the last 4 years. And it is possible, because we've been looking to see if we can change the name to better present what we are all about, which is the South African Jazz Awards. So we have finally this year secured that name. So at some point, as part of our branding process, we will do that. But for now, Mzantsi is essentially our name, because we are here, and we're hoping as we go along, we get to merge the two brands. It's always very, very difficult to do. So that's the background. And on that, it looks like my laptop is about to work with me. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes, see if I can connect so that I can share the presentation in terms of what we have in terms of announcing the nominations, and I'll share a little bit about the process itself in terms of how the process worked. And a question that we haven't been sharing, or the information that we haven't been sharing a lot, still not exactly very good with all the communication stuff, is the idea around prizes and what do people get. So we keep getting questions around, yeah, we hear that there is this Jazz Awards, but what do people get? So I will also talk a little bit about that. But let me pause for a few minutes. I just want to see if I can load the slides. You might fall off, but don't disappear. Just join back in afterwards. But give me a second, so don't move yet. Let's see. Is that the wind? Right. Hey, those are technology. All right, let me check. I can hear myself. That's not. Move on into the nominations in the different categories. Was the Lifetime Achievement Award, which I think when we started, we honored a lot of our stalwarts, Gilbert Matthews, Ndate, that's your fault, Ndate Themba Mkwena and Makaya Nzoko, because we wanted to make sure that they are honored while they are alive. And I have a nice conversation we've had with Makaya, and he was essentially in tears to remember that, to feel that we even remember him. And they just show me the spelling error there, so don't hold it against me. I will fire somebody as soon as we are finished. So that's it about the categories. I think the categories that we have this year are essentially just an indicator of where we are as a nation, but we will probably add a lot more. So it would be nice if the slide can move. So what's the criteria that we're using for people to get into the awards? And I think this is the conversation that I was talking about, that one of the things that we're trying to do with this is excellence awards as opposed to opinion awards. So the first three things that people make it into the awards, and I'll talk about how people get in or get nominated. But first, what's the criteria? The first thing is you must be a South African musician or a participant within the jazz community in this instance. That's the first thing, with an exception, of course, of two categories, which is the best international album and the best international what do you call it? The best international collaboration award. So those awards would essentially be the ones that technically would get would include people from outside of the country. But generally, the requirement is that you should, first of all, be part of, be a South African. The second piece is that you should have released music. You should have released the music starting on the 1st of April to the 29th, actually the 31st, sorry, the 31st of March 2020. And we've been doing that every year for the last 4 years. People have been asking, can we go backwards? And I go like, no, well, look, we started only in 2017, and it makes sense to really just start and do this thing in from the time that we start. And then the criteria around how do we then assess the entries after they've come in. And we've been very lucky, and we've been very excited about the idea that we have had many people submit, and we see really beautiful stuff that comes through. The first thing that we look at is how creative is the piece of work that we've received. I think in the first year, we received about 20 nominations. We're really just crawling around asking for people to give us, and we were very lucky to have people like Untutuzo and Sibuma Shidwane and all of those supporting us in helping us create this process. But as we go, we realized the number started increasing, and this year, even during the COVID, we kind of have gone back a little bit to the space where we started in 2017, which is not bad, especially in a year where there's a lot of jazz music that has actually been released. I think South Africans have been working very hard, artists, in terms of releasing the stuff. I see Paul Henma is here, and I have to say I'm very excited that you released 2 pieces of work, which I personally really enjoy. But my personal opinion has nothing to do with whether it ends up in the space or not. So it's creativity, the first thing. How creative is the piece of work? 2, how great, how exciting, how enjoyable is the music that people are having. And then the third criteria is the contribution to the industry. Is this thing adding something new into the industry, or is it the same old type of thing? And then the scores are obviously calculated from 1 to 4 by the different judges, who then we bring them together, do a weighted average, and then decide in terms of that whether you get ranked in or not. And then, of course, the last piece of criteria there is the longevity. How long is this thing going to be in terms of its contribution into the industry? So that's essentially the criteria. And how do people nominate stuff into how do people nominate stuff into the awards? It's actually done in 4 ways. One, the committee will obviously decide or nominate music that has been released, because they are really jazz lovers and they are aficionados, people who work within the jazz space, either as musicians or as radio DJs or just lovers of music. So there's a whole different categories of people who are sitting within the committee, and they submit their recommendations. And then, of course, we contact and do a call for nominations through to the music to the music stations, to the recording companies, and to the musicians, to essentially say, here is a call for nominations, submit by this time. So that's how we get it, and we didn't get too much this year, but we got enough to be able to decide whether we carry on. Cool. So before I then talk about the nominees on this, are there any questions in terms of what I've been saying here, or should we carry on? And just feel free to unmute yourself and talk, because I can't see with my screen up. Going once, going twice. I see there's a comment there in the chat. Let me see. Ah, okay. It was Marlon. Thanks, Marlon. I figured it out very quickly. All right. So just moving on then. So starting with the category of best jazz album, this is essentially an album that has been assessed, evaluated, or noted as the one that contains the more music that is more enjoyable. I know I'm not using very nice English right now. It's my 7th language, but essentially we had about 17 nominees coming through into this category. But one of the things that we are doing differently this year, as opposed to any of the other years before, where we would actually just let everybody in, there would be a pre-assessment that happens with the jury, and then after the jury, we end up with the top 6, and the top 6 are essentially the people that meet the score of 15 and above, and these are the nominees that came through. Ndaba Zulu and the Umgidi Ensemble with the Queen Nandi composition, production. That is Steve Dyer, Genesis of a Different World. This is Mesh Mashilwane and Umkulego, containing that Izayoni the Village, which I personally love. Again, and I'm so glad about for this album that the track Zippy remains one of my favorite from this album. But I'm glad to actually see McCoy on that list finally after many years that we've been doing this thing. And then of course Viwe and his ensemble with the album Tributes, as well as the only other female today, which is a bit of an interesting challenge I'll talk about a little later, with Sispa with the album Indlela Yakai. So that's the nominations that essentially made it onto the top 6 of 17 nominations for this particular category. Then for the category Best Jazz Song, together by Mesh Mashilwane made it up. Ndaba Zulu and the example with the song Ngovivi made it up. Zippy, as I mentioned, it looked like I was the only one that really loved it, and it made it into that. And then of course, Biwe Strelukolo, as well as Backup Blue with that Steve Dyer. Then Panda Panda and the Crocodiles, Esther and James. They actually made it into that, and I'm very excited to actually see that. The album, the category Best Contemporary Jazz Album, Sean Sanby, Out of the Candlelight, Sibu Mesh Mashilwane, Amanzi Nemifula, Umkulego, that whole album, Victor Khatampi, and I think this is one of the things I really enjoy. We actually get to also find new people that are not really popular, because it's not the popularity contest. It's really assessed on, is this jazz? Is it meeting the criteria that we're talking about? So he's doing some very interesting contemporary smooth jazz there. Then Panda Panda with Africado showing up there, and then you had Tanzanero. I'm enjoying their bit there with Vintage, as well as Pam Lalose with Indlela Yakai. And as I said, these were the categories that we struggle quite a bit with in terms of who should be in which category. So I will get, I'm very aware that I will get people going, but this one is supposed to be on that side, and that one is supposed, but trust me, we spent about 15 days of back and forth trying to figure out what fits where in terms of this. So this is what we have going. And then best traditional album has that coming through. Just want to check something. Yeah, um, has that coming through. I'm glad to see it has to be jazz sitting there because they're making some really great stuff. Brare, I'm really excited with you guys about some of the work that you guys are doing, and I'm glad that finally we get to see some of that stuff also on the award. And then, of course, I talked about Paul, Dr. Paul Henman in terms of morning into evening. That also made it into that. I'm very excited about Clement Benny by way of introduction. And of course, Steve Dyer, Genesis, A Different World is what we have there as a list. And then best female jazz is probably a category that this year we're very disappointed about because last year we actually had really great nominees and really great entrants in it. But we have no less great artists there. You should have put the name of the album there. You're fired. So that's Ziza Muftik, sorry, closet comedian. Ziza Muftik, the beautiful music in that album. And then, of course, Spamdlalus Indeleka Eyakaya. Last year, that category was won by Talimona, and I was very excited that she won. And I think contemporary award was actually went to Gabi Motuba. So we had some very nice nominees there, and I'm hoping as we keep going through this thing in year 10, we have to be turning many female musicians away. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. Yeah. And then in terms of the best male jazz artist, that would be Riley G for his new album that he just released, and I'm glad it actually finally made it. And then of course Bumesh Mashilwane, McCoy Mkhubata with the Brasa Cup sessions, Tanzanero, and Viwe as well as Victor with The Right Thing. And again, that category had a very long list of about 14 people that got into that. So people that essentially made it up to here, it essentially means there was a lot of, within the committee at least, a lot of favor for the music and what it could contribute into the society of music or community of music that we have. And then best newcomer is my favorite category because we always get to find out who are the people that are going to be the people we watch in the community space. And it has to be jazz there, Rare and his guys there. And then we have a new guy there, guitarist Efinev. I haven't heard of him before, so it was the first time that I got it. And Spa, given that this is her best album, has made it into that list. And again, I think one of the things that we're doing with Mpumi, and you'll hear a lot about it as we go along this process, is establishing a development framework where more than just having to depend on the music schools, more than just having to depend on people just sitting in the townships and are not being discovered. We are putting mechanisms in place to bring more new people in a more managed, in a more controlled way into this music space. And I think many of you already are aware of the Boinkosi Madonsela Quartet, which is one of our first projects that we started doing this with, and they became our house band. And I know Brasai, I'm not sure if you are on the call right now, but there's a nice jazz orchestra that we came across down in Cape Town, and it would be very nice if we can help it to see if we can showcase them onto the show on the 29th when the event is happening, because that's also one of the things that we do. They don't have to just be nominees. We also want to bring them in so that you guys, when you come to the event, you can actually experience the music. Then I think many of us as South Africans and South African musicians and people working from this part of the continent are always working together with international artists to create our music. So it's never really just us alone. And unfortunately, this year, we didn't actually have any entries in this category. We may have missed some people. And again, that's what this call for nominations is always about. It is always about make us aware. We don't know everyone. We don't know everything. We depend on the public because the public submits. They nominate you. If they've listened to your music and they've heard it, they will nominate you when the calls for nomination come in. Your music company will nominate as a musician, as a radio station, as a jazz club. Nominate yourselves. Let's own these awards. They are not my Mongezi Jazz Awards. They are actually, I've created them to be jazz community awards. So I'm really just asking you guys to let us know where is everyone so that we can have more people coming in. And then finally, I think in terms of the musical categories, we always looking at international jazz. I changed the name of that because it used to be called Best Foreign Jazz. I'm not a very big fan of the word foreign because nobody's a foreigner anyway. As soon as you say hello and you are somebody's friend, you're not a foreigner. And that's the music that made it. There was a lot. I think there was about 25 pieces of music and albums that were nominated today. Last year and the year before last, this category was won by, last year it was won by Brentford Marsalis. And so I had to go, I went to the US, had a very beautiful interview with him, and he won, and he was very appreciative that because it's a public vote category, he was very appreciative that it was actually voted for by the public, not by us as the jury. And last year, a year before last, Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, which I also went to New York, shared it with her. She was performing there and really appreciated, won this. So we don't know who's going to win it this year, but I think we work very closely with these guys, and it's good to honor their music as well. All right, so that's it in terms of the musical categories for the Mzantsi Jazz Awards, and 3 of these categories are public categories: the best jazz album, the best song, as well as the best foreign, best international award, which used to be called the best foreign award. They are international. So these will be voted for by the public. We won't know what the outcome is until 8:30, 7:30 on the day of the award. So many people would actually then be walking around being voted for by their fans. And this is where you can engage your fans and get them to really vote for you. Last year, the best jazz album was won by Zasha, and she campaigned quite a bit. The best jazz album, the best newcomer, and as well as the best female, if I'm not mistaken. So don't hold me to this. I'm not very good with detail. They actually win, as of last year, also a musical video that comes that we fund through our partners, and we managed to do that for Zasha. It will be released in a few days, as well as one for, oh yeah, that's best jazz song as well, for Tungununu with Ndivuo NL, who won from Limpopo last year. Right, so that's it in terms of the musical categories. And then of course the radio stations playing jazz, Alex FM, who never failed to come through. So we are really grateful also for some of the support, because I think Alex FM, right from the beginning when we did this, they were the first ones to actually interview us, and they're always coming through in terms of that. and they haven't won yet, so I'm not sure what's happening. So maybe this year it's their year. Kofifi FM and Nwaku always supporting us in terms of that. Again, this is not the reason they made it. It's because they've been nominated. If we have 25 there, we only end up with 6. This year, these are the only 3 categories. These are the only 3 that came through, and we are excited that you guys are really interested. Trans Africa Radio, is good to see it there for the first time on the list, and we will see how it went, because I think they play some really nice jazz music in terms of their jazz sessions on Sunday morning. Some of the other radio stations that I shouldn't be getting in. I have a jazz show that I'm running on Fridays because I'm crazy. Who listens to jazz on Fridays on radio? But I do. So, but it's not gonna make it onto this list because we are the employees also of the Mzantsi Jazz Awards. So no competition. We'll still have jazz shows happening on Sundays. Sorry, I'm being mean. And then I think these guys have already won in a sense, because they are the only ones that got nominated. And this is, again, one of those categories that I'm really disappointed that we didn't get enough. But I understand it's a very difficult year, COVID year. People had no time to be focusing on entertainment in this instance. And many people, many musicians, many artists have struggled. And I think we are quite aware of that. And I think in our also conversations and how do we support musicians and all of that, our prizes, we ended up having to also add some prize money there that hasn't necessarily been, so that we can at least keep the standard from last year when we introduced cash prize money. But we're hoping to be able to make that also worthwhile beyond just people winning the trophy as well as the goodie bag from the sponsors. There will also be a cash prize there, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say, so I'm not going to say it just in case I get in trouble. But there's a check in the bag when you win. Special Effects Jazz Club and also Sis Harriet today are the ones that submitted. So I would imagine they would be, they are almost an automatic winner. And it's always interesting here because we haven't really made a rule around what happens if the person is the only person in the category. But I know that from the music categories are very different because there's just so much beautiful jazz music in South Africa. And that's it. I think from this, that would be all the categories, if I'm not mistaken. The Lifetime Achievement Awards, we will share on the day after we've spoken to the different awardees. There is no competition there. What we really do is, as a committee, we come together, we ask who are the people that really deserve in terms of contribution to jazz, contribution to our landscape, who deserve to be recognized. And I think last year we had Ndatekaya Mahlangu there, and then I think a year before was Ma'am Dorothy Masuka. We were going to actually do, because what we want to do with all the Lifetime Achievement Award winners is to then do a Mzantsi Award honors concert. We did one for Ma'am Netambuli a year and a half ago, but we wanted to do one for Ma'am Dorothy Masuka this year, was it last year? And she left us right at the time as we were busy organizing the concert. But that's it for the Mzantsi Jazz Awards and the announcement. And I'm gonna leave it there for now and open this for questions, if there are questions, if there are concerns, and otherwise snacks. So, any questions before we wrap the process up?
Hi, yes, Doc, Marco here.
Yes, Marco.
The voting process, please go through it again. Now, this is now for the public vote.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? You still hear me, Wako?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. No, look.
There's just jazz playing from your computer now.
Oh, shit. What's happening? Hold on.
Thank you for the bed music. It sounds fantastic.
So look, the voting process. If you look at the presentation, there are characters there for in terms of the public categories. I'll put the slide back a little bit so that you can see. Why do I have music in the background? Hold on. What happened here? Sorry about that.
It's almost Friday.
So if you look, what happens is as soon as we finish here, we're going to then send a press release. We're going to announce this thing through to the musicians, those who have been nominated. And the work then going forward is for the musicians to canvass, as we will be doing also in our own media way, to canvass for the different votes. But it is obviously important for everyone who has been nominated to drive votes for their own songs. And I think that's one of the challenges that people we got before, where people go like, yeah, but how do people get to win in terms of the public? With the public, we have nothing to do with it except to rank. After that, that number that's on the side of the award there, of the nominee, is the number that people vote for using the cell, using the 40 number that you can see on the screen now. And what I just want to put it back up. Sorry, just give it 2 seconds. Yeah, 40439. So that's the number that people then send that vote. And I think the Z8 as award, Z8 as, then they use the nominee code. Let's say for Ndaba Zulu, that would be BJ1, and then to that number. And then there is an international number for the people that have international voters that they want to vote, which we will announce as part of the press release, but also continuously on both on our page and in all the different communiques. Does that answer your question, Wako?
Yes. I'm sorted. Thank you.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Any other question?
Hi, Dr. Mo.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to talk about performances on the day.
Well, I don't know if I want to talk about performances on the day because I don't know. Look, one of the things I can say though is that every year what happens is the people that have been nominated, we organize a program, we talk to the different nominees, we ask them to perform as it has happened in the past. This year it's going to be interesting because for once, we're not doing it ourselves. We're asking Bumi to be a musical director. So he's the one that will be putting together the program and how the performances will be happening. But I think the important thing, Douglas, as a question is, for me, the performance is always the celebration of jazz. More than anything else, the awards are just by the way. The important thing is the excitement and the celebration and the people that keep coming every year to the celebration. And we are worried also about COVID-19, speaking of the performances, because we don't know yet, although we are allowed officially now to perform, and we have to do the sanitizing and safety protocols that are required by the Ministry of Arts and Culture and the government in general. We are not sure yet if that will continue with the numbers, COVID-19 numbers spiking as they do. But if it's up to us, we are going to be celebrating jazz on the 29th live, because everybody keeps asking, we need live jazz. We've been hooked up, we've been closed in for the last 120 days, and we need to come and celebrate. So invite people, to come and celebrate with us, but we are prepared to actually do it online, and we'll announce how that works for each of the nominees who have been announced today. Thanks for that question, Deborah.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question? Mr. Madlala, thank you for joining us. It's good. It's good to see you. It's good to see you for once. I like the picture behind you. All right. If there are no questions, I think we are done. Thank you guys for spending time with us and joining us, and looking forward to seeing you on the 29th of August at the Mzantsi Jazz Awards. But in the meantime, tell everybody that you have been nominated. If your people have been nominated, let's celebrate, venerate, and recognize jazz.